There is a specific quality of light that only exists in a room where the curtains haven't been opened in 3 days. It is not darkness, it is something softer than that. A dim, suspended kind of stillness that feels somehow both suffocating and safe. The blanket is warm, the ceiling is familiar. The world outside is happening, technically, but it feels like something playing on a screen in another room. You can hear it, you just don't feel compelled to join it. This is not laziness. It never was. Psychologists have begun paying closer attention to a behavior that millions of people already know from the inside. The tendency to spend entire days, sometimes consecutive ones, lying in bed. Not sleeping exactly. Not doing nothing exactly. Scrolling sometimes. Staring. Replaying conversations. Watching something without really watching it. Being present in a body that doesn't want to be anywhere else. The internet gave it a name, bed rotting. But the name, like most internet names, is both too casual and too cruel for what it actually describes. Because what is happening in that bed is not rot. It is something more complicated. Something that, once you understand it, starts to look less like failure and more like a system doing exactly what it was built to do. You were built for this, and that is worth understanding. To understand why some people return to bed the way others return to the sea, you have to go back further than last Tuesday. You have to go back to the first rooms you ever learned to feel safe in. For many people who find themselves pulled toward horizontal stillness, early life was not particularly still. There was noise, emotional, relational, sometimes literal. There were environments that required a level of alertness that no child should have to maintain. Homes where the atmosphere shifted without warning. Caregivers whose moods were weather systems, unpredictable, requiring constant reading. Classrooms that felt like performance stages. Social landscapes with invisible rules that everyone else seemed to have memorized. And so the body learned. It learned that the outside world costs something. That engagement requires energy that is not always replenished. That the safest place, the most legible place, the one place where the rules did not change without notice, was often a room. A bed. A quiet, bounded space where nothing was required of you and nothing could surprise you. This is not a character flaw. It is a nervous system memory. What most people miss about the person in the bed is what is actually happening neurologically in that stillness. The brain does not go quiet when the body goes horizontal, quite the opposite. Psychologists call it the default mode network, a constellation of brain regions that activates most powerfully when we are not engaged in external tasks. For most people, it hums in the background. For you, it may have been running at full volume since childhood. This is the network responsible for self-reflection, for emotional processing, for replaying the past and imagining the future, for simulating other people's perspectives, for the kind of deep internal narrative building that happens not at desks or in meetings, but in the suspended quiet of a room with closed curtains. In other words, you are not doing nothing. You're doing something that has no visible output and no socially legible value. You are processing. And for a nervous system that has spent years absorbing more than it was designed to absorb, processing is not optional. It is survival. The bed is not where you go to escape your life. It is where you go to digest it. There is a particular kind of person who finds this hardest to explain to others. They are, in social settings, often described as warm, attentive, good listeners, perceptive in ways that feel almost uncanny. They notice the shift in someone's tone before anyone else does. They feel the emotional temperature of a room the moment they enter it. They carry other people's feelings home with them without meaning to, turning them over in the dark like stones they found on a walk and couldn't leave behind. This is not empathy as a gift. This is empathy as a metabolic process. And like all metabolic processes, it produces byproducts that need somewhere to go. The bed is where those byproducts go. What looks from the outside like withdrawal is, from the inside, something closer to decompression. The social world asks you to be regulated, responsive, available. It asks you to manage not just your own emotional state, but the emotional states of people around you. And you do it. You do it well. But there is a cost, and the cost is horizontal. Here's the quiet irony that most people who care about you will never quite grasp. The days you spend in bed are not the days you are at your worst. They are the days your body is finally honest with you. The more alarming days, the days worth paying attention to, are the ones where you push through, where you perform functionality so convincingly that no one, including you, notices how close to the edge you are, where the smile is real enough and the to-do list gets done and the texts are answered, and somewhere, underneath all of it, the tank is registering empty. The bed is not the crisis. The bed is what comes after the long silence of pretending there is no crisis. This distinction matters, because if you mistake rest for failure, you will begin to layer shame on top of depletion. And shame, of all the things a depleted nervous system does not need, is near the top of the list. Shame is load-bearing weight on an already tired frame. There is a version of this experience that crosses a line. It is important to name it clearly. There is a difference between a nervous system that needs extended rest and a nervous system that has stopped believing that leaving the bed will change anything. The first is regulation. The second is something that deserves more than understanding. It deserves attention, support, and sometimes professional care. When the bed stops being a place of return and becomes a place of permanent residence, when the stillness stops feeling like relief and starts feeling like the only option, when the world outside doesn't just feel costly but feels pointless, that is not rest. That is a signal. And signals, unlike feelings, are not meant to be waited out. They are meant to be responded to. You will know the difference. Your body already does. What is rarely talked about in all the cultural noise around productivity and hustle and the performance of a well-lived life is how profoundly disorienting it is to exist as a person who feels things at this volume. The modern world was not designed for your nervous system. It was designed for throughput, for output, for presence that is measurable, visible, optimized. It rewards the person who can move quickly from one task to the next without the residue of the last one slowing them down. It pathologizes the pause. It has no language for the kind of work that happens when the laptop is closed, and the body is still, and the mind is quietly dismantling something that needed to be dismantled 3 weeks ago. You have spent a long time wondering if something is wrong with you. The more precise question is whether what is wrong is you, or the architecture of a world that forgot to account for people who feel everything twice. Here's what begins to shift when you stop calling it laziness. When you remove the moral weight from the act of lying still, something underneath it becomes visible. Not a character flaw, a pattern with a logic. A nervous system that learned early and thoroughly that the outside world requires more than it gives back. That social engagement is not net neutral, it is net costly. That the only place the math works out is in the quiet of a room that asks nothing of you. That is not failure. That is adaptation. And adaptation, once you recognize it as such, can be worked with. You cannot shame yourself out of a nervous system response. You cannot productivity hack your way past a body that learned, long before you had words for it, that stillness was safety. But you can begin, slowly and without force, to expand the definition of what feels safe. Not by leaving the bed before you are ready, but by asking, with genuine curiosity and without judgment, what the bed has been protecting you from, and whether with the right conditions, the right support, the right quality of rest, some of those things might be safe to face now. The person who spends a day or several in the suspended stillness of a room with closed curtains is not falling behind. They are not broken. They are not lazy or lost or without direction. They are carrying something heavy, probably something they did not choose to carry, and they are carrying it the only way their body knows how. There is a quiet dignity in that, not the dignity of achievement or output or visible effort. The quieter kind, the kind that exists in the simple act of continuing to exist when existing is harder than it looks. You are not rotting. You have never been rotting. You are, in the most literal and underappreciated sense of the word, recovering. If any part of this felt like something you already knew but had never heard named, This channel is a space for exactly that, for the inner lives that rarely make it into the conversation, for the emotional architectures that are real and coherent even when the world has no category for them. If this resonated, consider subscribing. There is more here for you. And in the comments, I'd like to ask you this. What does your bed mean to you? Is it a place of rest, escape, recovery, or something you haven't found the word for yet?